The next conversion that we're going to do is convert from fraction notation to percent notation. To do this, we have to look at our first step, which is to find the decimal notation. And since we already know how to convert decimals to percents, then we're just going to go ahead and do that. So we're going to look at our first example. We have 9 over 16. So the first thing I need to do is go ahead and divide that 9 by 16. Since 16 won't go into 9, I am going to have to add a decimal and a 0. 16 will go into 90 5 times. 5 times 16 is going to be 80. 90 minus 80 is 10. Since I have a remainder, I'm going to add another 0. We're going to see if it's going to repeat or if it'll end. 16 goes into 100 6 times. 16 times 6 is going to give us 96. 100 minus 96 gives us a remainder of 4. So I'm going to, again, have to add one more 0. 16 goes into 40 2 times. So far it's not ending, it's not repeating, so I'm going to take it out just a little bit further. 2 times 16 is 32. 40 minus 32 is going to be 8. Since I have that remainder, I'm going to go ahead, add this 0 again, and 16 goes into 80. Luckily for us, 5 times. Exactly. So we have no remainder, and we're done. So we've now done our first step. We found the decimal notation. Now our second step, convert the decimal notation to a percent notation. So all I'm going to do is go ahead and remember my steps. When I'm making a decimal a percent, I have to move my decimal point over 2 places to the right. 1, 2. Therefore, 9 over 16 is really 56.25%. So now I'm going to look at my next example. If we look here at example 2, we have 1/6. So again, our first step is to find the decimal notation. So I'm going to have to go ahead and divide. Since 6 won't go into 1, I'm going to put a decimal and my 0. 6 will go into 10 one time. 1 times 6 we know is 6. That gives us a remainder of 4. I'm going to add another 0 and bring that down. 6 goes into 40 6 times. That's going to be 36. 40 minus 36 gives us a remainder of 4. So I'm going to add another 0. 6 goes into 40 6 times. 6 times 6 is 36. 40 minus 36 gives us a remainder of 4. So I know as soon as I add my next 0, what's going to happen is I'm going to keep getting this pattern of 40, 36, 40, 36, 40, 36, all the way down, which means I'm going to have a repeating decimal. But we're done with our step 1. So now we have to convert the decimal notation to a percent notation. Again, all we need to do is take that decimal and move it 1, 2 places to the right. So we know 1/6 is going to be 16.6%. But since we already said that this was repeating, we need to show that it's repeating even as a percent. And we know to write a repeating decimal, we put that repetent bar there. So now I have that, and I add my percent sign, and we're done. The last type of conversion we're going to do is converting from percent to fraction notation. Now this can be a little tricky. Step 1 tells us to use the definition of percent as a ratio to multiply. Step 2 is to simplify. Doesn't sound very difficult, but let's look. So first thing we have is 75%. I'm going to go ahead and make 75% a fraction, which is 75 over 1. And then I'm going to multiply it. My definition of percent is something over 100. So 1 over 100 would be our percentage here. So then I'm just going to multiply the fractions. 75 times 1 is 75. 1 times 100 is 100. For those of us who do remember multiplying fractions, I could have reduced before I multiplied. Instead, I'm going to go ahead and reduce now. I can divide each of these by 25, and I'm going to get 3 over 4. So 75% is 3/4 as a fraction. Now that was one that a lot of us probably know. But let's look to see what happens in example 2. This one's a little bit trickier. I'm working with the decimal, but I'm going to solve it the same way. I'm going to take my 62.5 make it a fraction, so put it over 1, and then multiply my percent as a ratio, 1 over 100. That leaves me with 62.5 over 100. Since we don't really have decimals within fractions, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that decimal. The way I can do that really quickly is to move my decimal to the right one place. If I do that in my numerator, I then have to do that in my denominator. That's going to leave me with the fraction of 625 over 1,000. When I add that extra 0. Again, we know because we're working with fractions that we are going to have to simplify this. So I'm going to go ahead and divide both 625 and 1,000 by 25. That's going to give me 25 over 40. At this point, I can see that I can simplify one more time and divide each of those by 5. 25 divided by 5 is 5. 40 divided by 5 is 8. Therefore, 62.5% as a fraction is going to be 5/8. Okay? And then the last one is 16 2/3%. Now this is a little tricky. We've seen a whole number, we've seen a decimal, now we're seeing a mixed number. One of the first things we have to remember with mixed numbers is I don't want to work with it. I'm going to first have to make it an improper fraction. So to do that, I have to multiply 16 times 3, and when I do, I get 48 plus 2 will be 50. So now I have 50 over 3. Since I don't have to worry about putting that over 1 because it's already a fraction, I can just go ahead and multiply that by my 1 over 100. So now I'm going to multiply 50 times, because I didn't do it on the last one, I'm not going to multiply. I'm going to reduce before I multiply. 50 and 100 can both be divided by 50. 50 divided by 50 is 1. 100 divided by 50 is 2. So I simplified first, and now I can just go ahead and multiply straight across. 1 times 1 is 1. 3 times 2 is 6. So therefore, we know 16 2/3% as a fraction is going to be 1/6.